Ryan Day is going to keep swinging, and all focus is on the playoff. He believes he is the right man for the job at Ohio State. These are Snap Judgments. It's National Signing Day. Happy Signing Day, everyone. That's Bill Landis and Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. So we can break it into two. Probably don't want to start with the recruiting impact on Snap Judgments. Bill, you and I talked about Ryan Day's thoughts on the job, his confidence in doing the job, his future doing the job. He believes he's going to be back. He believes he's got the ability to lead Ohio State to a national championship run, and that he has not had any of his confidence shaken despite a fourth consecutive loss in the game.
Yeah, I guess those were the two things, right? The two non-recruiting things were, what was that game plan, and why are you the right guy to do this moving forward? And I didn't think he was going to, and I don't really know why anyone thought he would, but he didn't come in and defend the game plan against Michigan and say, you know what, it was the right idea, we just didn't do it well enough. He, I thought, was fairly critical of the game plan, and he had to be because it was terrible. I think, shined a little bit of light on maybe why it was the way it was. He said they should have attacked the perimeter more and worked the receivers in more, and that's what they're focused on now moving into the playoff. We'll see whether or not lessons were learned there. I'm a little caught in between on whether or not they have a specific Michigan problem or if they have a specific or a larger, wider ranging problem with Ryan Day and the ability to accomplish this team's goals here. And I guess we'll find that out in a couple of weeks. But I thought he said all the right things, right? And he didn't back away from anything. He didn't explain away, I think, anything that wouldn't have made any sense. And then he did project a lot of confidence, obviously, that he's the right guy to move this team forward. Talked about the culture, talked about, they won 10 games, they got some big wins. They didn't win at Oregon, and they lost again to Michigan, but he feels like they have the right people and the right players here to still go take a run at winning a national championship. So that's what the focus is now.
Maybe I'm in the minority on this, Berm and Bill, but I think he was saying the things about the game plan that were obvious, that running it up between the tackles or at Michigan's defensive line was faulty. Mm-hmm. But I didn't feel like he was still fully believing that the game plan was poor, because there were so many references to 5 trips to the red zone and the 2 turnovers. I think Ryan Day still believes that they put together a good plan. Now, he said multiple times the game plan wasn't good enough and that the coaching wasn't good enough and that he's responsible for that. I think he checked all of the boxes that you're supposed to when you lose. But I thought there were clues dropped in there that made me think he didn't fully believe that coaching was absolutely the game plan problem on Saturday.
Because it's not. I mean, they had 5 trips in the red zone. You missed 2 field goals. If you make 2 chip shot field goals, you win the game. So all of the crap. Now, is the game plan good enough? Of course not. Everyone knows that. Was it still enough to beat that bad of a Michigan team if players had executed on some very simple things like not throwing an interception at the 9-yard line or not dropping a pass? Yeah, but it still doesn't matter. All these things have to be true at once. I don't think that it's fair to anyone, and I know people don't care about what's fair to Ryan Day or the coaches, but it's not on them to kick field goals. So yes, they played terrible. Yes, the game plan was terrible. But also, if they make 2 chip shot field goals, they win the game 16-13 despite all that. So I think that's probably where most of the coaching staff frustration lies. Damn, we really, really sucked. And then we still could have won. That's annoying. And I also think that if you look at the last 5 weeks of Ohio State offense, it was not good. It was not just a Michigan game problem. It was exacerbated in that game because they were unable to complete drives in the red zone. But if we go back to Nebraska, this offense hasn't had 400 yards in a game since Nebraska, I don't think, except for Purdue. I don't even think they did against Northwestern. It's not like the offense has been good for the last 6 weeks. It just all came to a head against Michigan because the Buckeyes were exceptionally stubborn, and that starts with the coaching staff. It's not just the game plan going into the game, though. That's one thing. It's also not adjusting at halftime when the game was going on. That's a coaching failure. There are tons and tons of coaching failures to go around from that game. But it is also a point of but 2 field goals still win the game. And I don't think that you can ignore that. I don't think we should ignore it.
I don't think you can ignore it because it's factually correct, but it cannot lead now Ohio State to the process of thinking that what they did in that game was good enough.
100%.
Right?
I just think that it has to be, we have to view it from both sides.
Sure. They played their worst game of the year and probably still should have won if they made 2 field goals. Should they have been kicking field goals in the first place? No, because the offense wasn't good enough.
Right.
Did they make 5 trips to the red zone? No. They were gifted some trips to the red zone and didn't execute. So, like, I don't know. I don't want to say anything that even approaches absolving Ryan Day from having the worst coaching day of his career at Ohio State.
No, I don't think he's being absolved of it. I think that there has to be nuance to how we look at it, though, and it's not just this was the worst game of his career, because it was, but also they still very well should have won the game with just doing simple things between the white lines. So either way, it wasn't good enough, and everyone knows it.
I did think, though, that without maybe expressly saying it, or maybe he did say it one time, he did approach a couple of times like, oh, if we maybe executed a little better, maybe we wouldn't be questioning the game plan so much, which is a bit frustrating, I think, to your point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the urgency and intensity of the conversation would be very different. But if they had won this game 16-13, would it have made people feel great about Ohio State? Like, no one would have maybe the same questions about like Ryan Day's future or what his buyout is. But would you have been standing here incredibly confident they were going to beat Oregon or go on a national title run? Like, no. Maybe they would say that we were overreacting to that and all that you have to do is win the game. But I think the questions would exist in the same way, because you can't have sat through that entire game and not watched Ohio State attack the perimeter or target Jeremiah Smith or Emeka Egbuka or anybody else and be like, this seems like they've really got a great handle on the way forward. I guess I'm belaboring the point.
I don't disagree, but again, we were also heading into that game talking about how Emeka Egbuka had three targets over a month, they ran the ball for 35 yards against Nebraska. Like, this is not just a one game problem, and
sure.
Don't get me wrong, that doesn't absolve anything from Saturday. In my opinion, it makes it a bigger issue, because this is not something they have been able to get by and win games. We had this exact conversation after the Nebraska game.
Yeah.
Well, they won the game. That's what matters. Now you can move forward. Like, this one, you didn't win, and it is an indicator that there's something else wrong with the offense. And maybe we've glossed over how important the offensive line injuries were because they took care of business against Penn State. I don't know, but I don't think that, like, we all want to look at this and say, well, it's Michigan, this is why it happened. But I think it happened because Michigan's defense is the best one they've played, and they weren't able to just sneak by with winning the game like they had done. They certainly did not play particularly well on offense against Penn State. They did not play particularly well on offense against Nebraska or Northwestern or Indiana. I mean, Indiana, you have to remember that game was a punt return, a blocked punt. I mean, there's a lot of things that went their way in those games that the offense was not the reason for.
Well, and that's one thing that Ryan Day talked about as well from Saturday, is having the right personnel and the right guys as well as a game plan. Clearly that was a mistake on special teams, but that also apparently is going to continue on with the 2.5 weeks. Ohio State will be back on the practice field today in the Woody to get ready for a playoff game. That's going to be in the Horseshoe, and that maybe there will be different offensive linemen out there that maybe they should have made an adjustment in the game on Saturday. And I don't think that you can look anywhere else other than right guard, which is, I don't know. It's unfortunate, but that's got to be where the conversation starts. And they said that maybe they would have moved Donovan Jackson from left tackle in the midst of that game. So I don't know what solution would have presented itself at tackle, but now the next couple of weeks become even more complicated and fascinating if they're going to reshuffle the deck again before playing a playoff team.
What would that even look like?
I have no idea.
It was interesting that he said it, and certainly the results on the field on Saturday would point you in the direction of something perhaps having to change. But I don't know what it could be. Like, there's not another tackle unless they've been hiding George Fitzpatrick for a month.
Another 3 weeks gives Zen Mahalski a chance to play, but obviously he wasn't great in the game that he played. So
you can't put Zen back out there at left tackle. I guess you could put Josh Padilla at center, although he's never played, and move Carson Hinsman back to guard where he's played better than he's played at center, and move Austin Saravel to right guard. I don't know. I don't think they have many solutions. It's great that they're keeping an open mind on trying to find them. I still think they probably have their best 5 out there right now, unless someone's going to make a huge jump that we're not expecting. Because is Luke Montgomery actually ready to play? He mentioned Josh Padilla, Luke Montgomery specifically, and then moving Donovan Jackson back inside were like the 3 things. And I don't know if that gives you actually a better opportunity to be successful. It could just be change for change's sake, which I don't know. Maybe that's not the worst idea either.
But unless they play Indiana, the defensive front that they're going to face in the first round of the playoff is going to be exceptionally really talented.
Good. Yeah.
All I'm going to say is that we watched them at this time a year ago move Matt Jones, is bench Carson Hintzman because he was playing poorly towards the end of the year. He certainly did not play as bad in the last 3 weeks of last year as Tegra Shabola has played the last 3 weeks of this year. So whatever you have to do to try to fix it, I guess you have to experiment. I think it's a silver lining for Ohio State. You get these extra weeks of practice. You don't have a lot of the distractions now that signing day is over. You don't have what you've had in the past years where your coaches are on the road for 2 weeks after the Michigan game. Like, that's not happening now. So I think you get an opportunity to tinker, and certainly not what you want, but you can't look at last week and say it was good enough, or the week before with Tegra Shabola, or the week before. And I want to reiterate, I'm not absolving Ryan Day and Ohio State against Michigan. I'm saying we were so focused on Michigan that we didn't really pay attention to how bad the offense has been for the last month and a half.
They were atrocious on third down, like basically since the Oregon game, like 35% on third down since the Oregon game. So that's one thing that was just kind of sticking out there for anyone who bothered to look for it to notice. But I think you do make a good point. The offense has not been firing on all cylinders since the Oregon game, and offensive line injuries I think do explain some of that. But this was the first time I thought where you're watching a game and you're just thinking to yourself, like, what are they trying to do, right? At least in those games where there wasn't super crisp, like they had some ideas on how to move the ball and moved it well enough. Like, this was a total departure from
because they did a number of other things to get the football to the perimeter or running counter or misdirection, and that did not happen against Michigan, which is why we've been so baffled about the game plan and trying to ask questions and wanting an opportunity like we had today to follow up with Ryan Day about what he saw and what they were trying to accomplish. And like, it's a lot of things jumbled up into one. I know it's frustrating for Berm that, like, on a day like today when there's a ton of, intrigue around this very talented Ohio State signing class, that, 40%, 50%, 60% of the conversation has to go back to Ryan Day and his future. But
but that's what's been opened up by what happened. Again, I'm just saying, if we took the last 5 football games and combined total offense and points for Ohio State, I would bet that the total offense is 30% less over that 5-game stretch than any stretch in Ryan Day's career at Ohio State. I would bet.
Maybe.
And I think we've just not been paying attention to it because they were playing bad teams and teams that we didn't think that there was any chance they'd lose to. And everyone assumes that Michigan, because they were 6-5 or 6-4, were that bad. And defensively, they have not been that bad. It gets you. But when it gets you like that, it does open the door for these conversations. And it's not like Ryan Day didn't know those questions were coming today. I mean, he was certainly ready for them. Yeah. I don't know that anyone's going to get an answer that satisfies them. That's what answer for the fans out there that are wondering or wanting him to answer the "why are you the right man for the job" question that you asked him. Mm-hmm. What answer do you think would satisfy people in that situation?
I don't think he could have given an answer other than one he given. I guess it's more of like wanting to see how that question lands for him, like if he projects confidence in his ability to do so. Because he can answer the question the right way, but like body language wise and tone, like not match what he's saying. I think that's probably the biggest thing. Like he's running this program for the rest of the season, whether you like it or not. And I don't think he has a ton of confidence behind him based off what just happened against Michigan, but you'd like to see him present himself and answer that question in a way that tries to get some of that back as Ohio State tries to win a national championship.
And Ross Bjork did say on Sunday that Ryan Day is the coach and they're sticking with him. Do you not believe that?
I thought that there was...
Do you think there's wiggle room?
I didn't think it was a definitive 2025 statement. I
didn't read it that way.
I didn't think that was in there.
I mean, I think that's a question worth asking. We maybe get a chance to talk to Ross Bjork at some point, but
we have requested an interview with Ross Bjork.
So that is the question. So when Ryan Day says, I'm going to be the coach here next year, is that confidence? Is it assuredness? Does he know that's the case? I mean, these are the things that have to... You're signing a top 5 recruiting class today. You're signing the 2 best players in the state of Texas. You're signing a 5-star quarterback from Ohio, the first Ohio quarterback since Joe Burrow. You're signing 27 guys by the time this is all said and done. Yeah, you lost Naeem Offord to Oregon, but he was, as we talked about on the podcast daily on Wednesday, kind of a luxury for Ohio State in this class because of Devin Sanchez. Like, these kids have not had the conversation or worry that Ryan Day is not going to be here. So, like, I think that matters because I'm confident that those conversations that the players, the Devin Sanchez's, their families, et cetera, have had with the higher-ups at Ohio State lead them to believe he's going to be here.
Well, I think it's still more likely than not that he will be because of not just what you mentioned, the class that was signed by Ohio State on Wednesday, The financial logistics are a part of it, whether I know that there are people that don't like that I continue to bring that up. It is absolutely a major part of the equation. There is not an unlimited amount of money here to build a roster or to fire a coach, his whole staff, and obtain a new coach. Like that, I know Ohio State is profitable. I know that the fan base has a bunch of wealthy boosters, but there is a little bit of fatigue built into that. Like, I don't know what the conversation would be like if they lost on December 21st. Yeah. I do think that part has to play itself out because to me, it's just as likely that Ohio State wins 4 games as it loses the first one. Like, I don't know, and I don't know how the conversation would shift at that point. But even if the worst case scenario does happen for Ryan Day on that day, I still find it unlikely overall that he's not the coach in 2025.
Yeah, if I had to pick one or the other, I guess that's what I would say too. He was asked specifically, like, would he leave on his own accord? And he said he doesn't have any interest in that. That's never crossed his mind. It'll all depend on what happens on the 20th or the 21st and after that. Like, of course he answers that question confidently and says he's going to be here next year because he thinks they're going to go win that game and then go on a run in the playoff. If he said anything to the contrary, that means he's not confident in his team's ability to go accomplish the goal.
And if that were the case, then he should be like a
right. So, like, we'll see. Like, if we get to the end of the season and they're 4 years in a row of not achieving anything, then you have to have the hard conversation, and maybe that hard conversation leads to Ryan Day coaching on the hottest seat anyone's ever coached on in 2025, or maybe it means he's not the coach here next year. I don't think anybody can say definitively one way or the other what's going to happen. Like, you can have opinions on what you think should happen. Like, I think he should be coaching for his job right now. I don't really know why he wouldn't be, but I don't make that decision. That's up to Ross Bjork and his appetite for making that kind of decision if it comes to that. And we don't know what his appetite is for that. But I agree with you that I don't think the vote of confidence or whatever it was that he gave the Dispatch last week was a definitive, he's definitely our coach next year statement. It was, he's our coach, we believe in him to go win a national title. And obviously,
and all our focus is on the playoff.
Yeah, and if he does that, then of course he's the coach next year.
Fair.
Signing day was great, bro.
I mean, it was not great. It was what you expected.
It was pretty good, like, relatively drama-free.
I think that the Ohio State coaching staff deserves a ton of credit for keeping this class as drama-free as they have for as long as most of these kids have been committed. Like, that is very rare in today's day and age. As we record this, it's almost 1:30 on signing day. The Buckeyes are still waiting on TJ Alford, who should send in his letter of intent. I think it's about 2:30 Eastern time is when it's expected from him.
His Big Ten scholarship agreement with Ohio State. Jarquez Carter, the defensive tackle from Florida, is not going to send his in until Thursday. That is part of what his school is doing. Ohio State was kind of hoping he would just send it in on Wednesday and then just do a ceremonial thing on Thursday, but he's doing all of the stuff at his school.
It's got to be real, Berm.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
It's got to be real. Epi Satanale, I think that's how I pronounce his name. I'm not sure. He's a defensive end from California, committed to UCLA. He's supposed to make an announcement. I think it's about 3:15 Eastern time. We expect that he will sign with Ohio State today, so there's still some moving parts. The big thing is the Buckeyes were able to hold off Auburn on the recruitment of Zion Grady, the defensive end from Alabama, who, like, Auburn had not sniffed around there at all until about
they're so weird.
about 3 o'clock on Tuesday when they lost
super sneaky
when they lost a 5-star commitment back to Michigan, and then all of a sudden they're like, let's go.
We just got all this money here. Would you like some?
That's how the conversation, I think, pretty much went. Zion Grady holds off. Auburn ends up flipping a kid from Tennessee instead, and so that money just gets moved down the line. A kid from the Washington, D.C. area.
Battle between Auburn and Tennessee. Gross.
So, but it is hard to understate how important Zion Grady is in this class at this point as the only edge rusher. Obviously still waiting on Satanale, so you needed him. Like, you could not lose him. But then the conversation really from here is about which guys are able to contribute as freshmen and where does Ohio State still need to supplement this class. And I mean, I tried to ask Ryan Day about exactly how many guys they're probably going to need in the offensive line room. My impression is that they're going to go after 2 starting offensive tackles in the portal and probably a 3rd guy just to have more depth. That is especially necessary now. Josh Simmons, if you hadn't seen it, announced his intentions to declare for the NFL draft. So all the conversation about would Josh come back or not is over. He's going to the NFL draft and he'll be a first-round pick. And now you have to find starters. And
you can just snuckle a bold P in there.
Well, Drew Rosenhaus said it, and it said to Shefty, he said high first-round pick.
He's going to be a first-round pick. And
it said in parentheses, according to Berm.
Yeah.
Well, I said that last year. I said second, but he outplayed my evaluation. But there's obviously still needs that need to be filled. We talked about it on Wednesday. The offensive line, the defensive line, especially tackle. Another running back is pretty important, I think, at this point for Ohio State.
Even though a transfer running back?
A transfer running back, because you're obviously expecting to lose Travion and Quinshon Judkins. And so you're a lot of confidence in what you have with James Peoples. But other than that, someone else needs to come in. So there's 25 guys that have signed, or 25 guys that have signed, 24, waiting on Alfred, Carter, and Satanale. So that brings you to 27. And I think you probably need 10 or 11 in the transfer portal to round out the 2025 new Buckeye class.
We'll talk about what some of those needs could be on the podcast daily for Thursday. It's 3 thoughts. We'll look ahead to that. Maybe we'll have 3 guys from the podcast on it. I don't know. Stick around and find out.
I bet you we do.
These have been snap judgments on the podcast, though. An interesting Wednesday, early signing period kickoff, and state of the program with Ryan Day. Thanks for joining us for these snap judgments. Thoughts on it. It's Bill Landis and Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. We'll talk to you tomorrow.